Hey, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the Parshat Share.
Rabbi.
Pleasure to hear your voice and to see so many of you. And I want to say welcome to all of our Torah Anytime viewers, together with our Zoom viewers. We are a multimedia sensory experience. I'm going to silence the crowd and then open it up. Wow, we got a Gerzov. Okay, silence the crowd.
Not silent.
You are now. And if you want to unsilence for a question, please do so. Okay. So, as you saw last week, I've become able to share screens now. I'm becoming a screen sharer. So let me share a screen with you. I think you'll still be able to see me in the corner, and we'll get started. I don't know how that happened. I want to be able to get to the top. There we go. Okay, I was asked what the title of tonight's shir is. Welcome to everybody. It's called Sinai Specific. Sinai Specific. We're all getting ready to prepare to revisit Har Sinai. Truth of the matter is that there's halachos brought down in Shulchan Aruch to decorate your shuls with greenery, as well as to decorate your homes with greenery. And this year it could be that people's homes are going to be easier to decorate than the shuls, but time will tell. In any case, the Parsha that we read this week, we read two, Parshas Behar and Parshas Bechukosai, and in it, Har Sinai is referenced. So the opening pasuk in Parshas Behar states, "Vayidaber Hashem o Moshe Behar Sinai Lemor." Right? That's number 2 in front of you, 25:1. And Hashem came to Moshe at Har Sinai, saying, Daber el bnei Yisrael v'yamartu alehem, speak to the Jewish people and say to them, Ki savo el ha'oretz asher ani nosein lachem. When you get to that land that I'm giving you, v'shavsa ha'oretz Shabbos l'Hashem, you're going to make a Shabbos of the land. And this is, of course, Shemitah. And Shemitah is a fascinating subject. Because not only does the Jewish people have a Shabbos, which is every 7 days, but the Jewish land has a Shabbos also. It's every 7 years. And the same way that there needs to be Shvita, a rest and a ceasing of creative activity by Jewish people, so too is there a mitzvah that the land of Israel also has to cease from creative activities, and there are specific malachos that you're not allowed to do. And I have a Rashi here that I'll go down and show you just on that. And Rashi asks, right there, it's the only time in Rashi that I think of the phrase, what does it have to do with the price of tea in China? Because Rashi asks, Ma inyan Shemitah etzel Har Sinai. What does Shemitah have to do with Har Sinai? Right? The Parsha just began, Vayidaber Hashem, Behar Sinai. God told us at Har Sinai. Well, so what? God told us other things at Har Sinai. We have the entire Aseres HaDibros we're going to lane. And not only that, we have a tradition, as Rashi states, Halo kol mitzvos nemru b'Sinai. All mitzvahs were related at Har Sinai. Elama Shemitah Nemru Klalosel Pratosel V'Dikdukeah Sinai. Avkula Nemru Klaloseim V'Dikdukein B'Sinai Kach Shnuya B'Toras Kohen. Which means, simply translated, that just like the laws of Shemitah, their generalities and particulars, were all taught at Har Sinai, even though it's being referenced to us now in Parshas Vayikra, so too all other mitzvos, also every mitzvah was given at Har Sinai as well. So Rashi says, nearly, it seems to me, shekach pirusha. I'll tell you what that means. Lefi shalom atzino shmitas karkol shenishnas ba'arvas moab b'mishnah Torah. We know in the 5th book of the Torah, we have something called Mishnah Torah, where there's a lot of repetition of mitzvos. And we see that mitzvos, Rashi says there, that are repeated, we learn new things about those mitzvos that we didn't hear earlier. But Shemitah is not mentioned later on in Mishnah Torah. Therefore, I might think, since it's not mentioned later on in Mishnah Torah and Dvarim, I might think that I learned everything. Lamadnu sheklalosel pratosel kula nemra b'Sinai. Uba kosav alamad kano kol dibor shenidbar lamoshe. To tell us that it's not just those mitzvos that are repeated in Mishnah Torah that were told over to us at Har Sinai, but here too, we had it in Mishpatim, it was brought up already there, and now we have a lot more of the details. We have the famous pasuk of Etzivisias Berchasi. It's the only time in the entire Torah that the Torah asks, you might ask, what are we going to eat? And Hashem says, Etzivisias Berchasi. It's an amazing thing, Shemitah. Shemitah, the land had to produce in the 6th year enough for the next 2.5 years into the 3rd year. Because you had 6th that you worked, 7th you didn't work, and then you have the 8th, and you didn't work on the 7th. So Shemitah is considered to be the mitzvah that it's associated with Emunah. So much so that we're taught that the 70 years of exile that the Jewish people suffered in Babylonia and Persia were a reflection and a consequence of 70 Shemitahs that weren't kept as properly as they should have been. Why is that the appropriate consequence? Because if you do not sanctify the land, you do not deserve to stay on it. When you're living in the palace, you have to treat the king and the queen and the princess properly. And therefore, if one does not do Shemitah properly, so then there's a consequence of you're not able to stay there. But let's go back up, as I wanted to, and teach that there are 4 different places in the Torah that we have this concept in Vayikra, 4 different mitzvos where the Torah says Behar Sinai. So the first one, I can't see it, it's behind a box here, I think it's Vayikra 6, is at the conclusion of the consecration ceremony of the Mishkan, of the Chanukas HaMishkan. The Torah says there, in number 2, and those are the rituals of the burnt offering and the meal offering and the sin offering and the guilt offering and the offer of ordination and the sacrifice of well-being. Asher tziva Hashem es Moshe Behar Sinai, that Hashem taught us at Mount Sinai. Biyom tzavosos b'nei Yisrael ha'akriv es karbaneim Hashem b'midbar Sinai. So, that's the first place. The first place is in Parshat Tzav, when the Jewish people are commanded to bring and create a tabernacle that we can still see today the remnants of in the city of Shiloh. And there was an 8-day ceremony, and that ceremony was concluded. Hashem wanted Moshe to write in the Torah everything I just told you now, I told you at Har Sinai. The next we already looked at, but I'll read it again, and that is that of Shemitah. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe Bahar Sinai lemor. God spoke to Moshe. Daber el bnei Yisrael, tell the Jewish people, Yamarto aleihem ki savo el haaretz. When you come to the land asher ani nosen lachem, that I'm giving you, v'shavsa haaretz Shabbos Lashem. You're going to make Shabbos for the land of Israel, right? Every 7 years, and then after 7 cycles will be the Jubilee, the Yovel year. And here also we see this concept of Behar Sinai. What's the third one? The third one is Ele HaChukim v'hamishpatim v'hatoros asher nosra Hashem beino ubein bnei Yisrael Behar Sinai biyad Moshe. So in this week, the second Parsha, Behar-Bechukosai, we have the Tochacha. We have rebuke. Now, if you were in shul, and hopefully we'll get back there sooner rather than later, the minhag is that since Tochacha is rebuke, we read it a little bit lower than we read the regular Torah reading. And historically, it was never appreciated. Nobody wanted to get that aliyah. Right? Nobody, who? You're giving me the Tochacha? I don't want the Tochacha. You're getting up there to read about all the curses? So, in certain places, they would give it to the rabbi. Right? And in other places, the Balkore who's already there, he reads it, which is what we usually do. So we don't call somebody up to read it. But again, the concept here is, it says Behar Sinai. Again, the same question. All the mitzvahs, 613 mitzvahs, are all taught to us at Har Sinai. Right? The Rav Sadia Gaon says in the 10 Commandments, the Aseret HaDibros, you can learn out all of them. So why specifically Shemitah at the end of Tochacha, by the Chanukah Samizbeach, the Mishkan? And finally, in case you didn't get it enough, in the last pasuk in the entire book of Vayikra, the Torah concludes, Eile ha-mitzvahs asher tziva Hashem es Moshe el bnei Yisrael Behar Sinai. These are the commandments that Hashem gave to Moshe for the Israelites on Mount Sinai. So, the obvious question is, why? Why these 4? What is it? We already said that one of them was when the Mishkan was built. One of them is the mitzvah of Shemitah. The third is the conclusion of the rebuke, the Tochacha. And the fourth at the end of the book of Vayikra. So, I was troubled with this. I saw it in the beginning of Parshas Behar, and I saw it at the end of Parshas Bechukosai, and then I saw that Rav David Hofstetter asked a question about all 4. So he says an amazing thing. An amazing thing that I'm so excited to share with you this evening. It's Chiddush. He says the reason why there are these 4 is because none of them, number 4 we'll talk about in a minute, but the first 3 you might have thought were only taught at the appropriate time. Meaning, when we first got the Torah, 49 days, 50 days, on the 50th day, coming out of Mitzrayim, why on earth would we need to know about the Mishkan? The Mishkan is only built a year later. Right? Hashem Shechina only comes the following Nisan. So why would it be necessary to know about the Mishkan at that point? Nope, it was taught at Har Sinai. Certainly, number 2, the mitzvah of Shemitah. 40 years we were in the desert. Why would we need to learn the laws of Shemitah 40 years before we got to be able to implement it? No, I want you to know we learned it at Har Sinai. All of the klalosev and digtukeha, the generalities and the principles. And the third is even the greatest, is that, okay, I understand Hashem, you had to teach us all the mitzvahs, but the consequences for the mitzvahs, the tochacha, for sure, as a parent, I wouldn't say that a parent knows, while the child is still young, every reward and every consequence that they're ever going to pull out of their hat to be able to either incentivize or educate their child. So if we do wrong, so this is the rebuke that we're going to get. And Hashem told us at the end of Behar-Bechukosai, comes the Torah, Behar Sinai. Nope, everything was Behar Sinai. Even though these three, and the fourth one, he says, is because I might think that once we get to the 40th year, the 39th year, when the Jewish people are in the desert and they're traveling through, so all the other mitzvahs that are later on, it's an amazing thing. You can't see me? Better? It's an amazing thing that the language in the book of Dvarim is a harder language than some of the psukim in Bereshis and Shemos. And those that like to follow along Kriyas HaTorah and who do the mitzvah properly of Shnai Mikra V'Yechad Targum, Dvarim is not as easy because, for example, Parshas Hazinu is Moshe Rabbeinu's Hebrew, and it's not as simple as Az Yashir. So Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan writes the reason why is quite simply because as the Jews traveled through the desert, the more influence they received from their surroundings, the more the language changed with them. And so when Hashem would come to Moshe Rabbeinu, it would be in the language after they had all the experiences with the different nations along the way, which is a truism even until today. I remember a bunch of years ago, I had the great schus of doing jury duty in Camden, New Jersey. And there's no schus like doing jury duty in Camden, New Jersey. And I got there, and you have to sit until they're going to call you, they're not going to call you. And by stroke of providence, I sat down next to a professor of linguistics and art and acting. And we struck up an hour and a half conversation until they told us we could both go home. And one of the things that she shared with me is we were talking about different accents even amidst the United States, right? You could tell when a person's from Philadelphia. You could tell when a person's from Brooklyn, New York. You could tell when a person's from Chicago or from Boston when they move the car or what have you. Wherever you go, there are different accents even in the United States. And she claimed that it was specifically this concept of like Dvarim, that since the immigrants who immigrated to that part of the world at that time, the way they were able to embrace and execute the English language is what became the accent of that particular place. So I don't know how to verify it. It's not in the Gemara, but it made a lot of sense to me. So moving back to our Har Sinai over here, we see that Sinai is everything. The question is, as we start our ascent in preparing for Har Sinai, I want to ask us to consider for a moment the first Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. Moshe kibel Torah mi Sinai. Moshe received the Torah from Sinai. Umisara liYoshua. And he went ahead and he transmitted it to Yehoshua. You know, before I do this, I want to go back and ask if there are any questions. Hold on. How do I do this? Stop the share. Okay. Before we move on, we're going to move on right now. Does anybody have any questions on the 4 different places I can unmute you? And there's a chat also probably telling me that you can't see me.
Rabbi.
Okay. Good. Looks okay. Does anybody... Yes, somebody said Rabbi. Go ahead.
Yeah, Robin Sue.
Oh!
I came in a couple minutes late. Did you define what the word Sinai meant?
No, I didn't. And it's interesting that you should ask that question, because the Gemara in Shabbos asked that question. And the Gemara states that several things, but the Gemara states that there's a relationship, actually, in modern Hebrew, Chinese is sin. So if you eat Chinese food, it's ma'achal sini. But that has nothing to do with Har Sinai. Sinai, the samach, can be related to the letter sin. And the letter sin, when you apply it to the word Sinai, is sina, means hatred. That when Hashem brought the Torah into the world, it allowed for jealousy. It allowed for there to be feelings of how come the Jewish people got the Torah and not anyone else. So Rabbi Elchanan Wasserman, Hashem Yinkom Damo, taught us that for all time the lesson is that a Jew can either choose Sinai or Sinna. Right? Either a Jew chooses to connect to Har Sinai and the Torah, or if not, then Hashem says, then you're not going to be able to withstand the exile. And it's an amazing thing how many nations, Nisana, could you shut that? How many nations have risen and fallen throughout the millennia, and that the Jewish people are still learning Torah on Zoom. That the Jewish people are still involved in Torah and mitzvos. And the only reason why is if they have connection to Sinai. They have a connection to Sinai, so then they're able to move forward. That's a good question, Robin Sue. Thank you. Anyone have any other questions or thoughts? We can unmute you if you do. You can unmute yourself. I can unmute you. Okay, if not, then I want to move to the Mishnah in Avos that teaches us about Har Sinai. Pirkei Avos, it states, Moshe kibel Torah mi Sinai, that Moshe received the Torah not from God, does it say, but mi Sinai, from Sinai. Now watch. Umisara liYehoshua. He transmitted it to Yehoshua, but it doesn't say Yehoshua misarua l'zakanim. It doesn't say that Yehoshua transmitted it to the Zakanim. It just says that Joshua to the Zakanim, to the elders. And the Zakanim just to the Nevi'im. The elders to the Nevi'im. The prophets. And here we get that word again, Unevi'im misarua l'anshei knesses hagdola. But the prophets transmitted it to the Anshe Knesses Hagdola, to the men of the Great Assembly, who are the people that made our Shmona Esrei, they made our Haggadah, and V'heim Amru Shlosha Dvarim, they taught us 3 things. Havu Mesunim Badin, that one should be very deliberate and patient in judgment. Ve'amidu talmidim harbe, one should have many students, fit as many people on your Zoom as possible. Ve'asu siyag l'Torah, and you should put a fence around the Torah. I'm not going to get into the teaching this evening, but I am going to get into first of all, to explain this concept of why does it say umisara only twice. Moshe received the Torah from Sinai and transmitted it. And there's only one other time that it says and transmitted it, right? And the prophets, he doesn't even say it in the English. It's not fair. In the Hebrew, it says the prophets misarua la'anshe knesses hagdola. The prophets transmitted it. It says it twice, transmission. Why does it say it only in those two? So the Mefarshim explain, because there was such a great leap descending in sanctity. So the difference between Moshe to Yehoshua, our teachers tell us, was like the difference between the reflection of the sun on the moon and the moon and the sun itself. That's the difference. And the same thing is true, that the difference between the Anshe Knesses Hagdola and the Nevi'im is that the Nevi'im had prophecy and the Anshe Knesses Hagdola no longer had the gift of prophecy. There were no more prophets anymore. But what I want to focus on in the remaining minutes that we have is, what does it mean Moshe Kibel Torah mi Sinai? Moshe received the Torah from Sinai. Okay, in fact, I don't even want to give you the answers. I see one's right there. We'll open it up for a moment of discussion and even unmute you. Okay, you're all unmuted. Does anybody have any, unless you muted yourself, does anybody have any answers on what does it mean that Moshe received the Torah from Sinai? Sinai is is a mountain. How do you receive a Torah from a mountain? Moshe received the Torah from Hashem. He didn't receive the Torah from a mountain. Robin Sue very cleverly raised her hand. Go ahead, Robin Sue.
It showed you the first line, but I was going to say it's where Mount Sinai was.
Okay.
In the middle of the desert.
Oh.
And they should have because they said another answer. I'm not going to give that answer.
Oh, okay.
But it was in the middle of the desert, and that there should be no distractions and whatever. It's so important that you should block everything else out. Get the Torah.
Mindfulness, to be able to focus on the truth of what the Torah is. Excellent. And you didn't even read the rest of my sheet. Good. Anyone else have any thoughts? There are no bad answers. Anybody have any other thoughts? You don't have to raise your hand, just your voice.
Touch your face.
Okay, then we're going to mute you and go back.
But you because he wanted me to talk. You see the green light?
Mute.
No, now it's mute.
So hit it again.
Okay. Back to our share screen. So the first answer you saw already was the answer that humility. It's the smallest of mountains. We're taught that Har Sinai, you would think, should have been Mount McKinley. It should have been the greatest, largest mountain in the world to receive the Torah. Nope. It was on a smaller of the mountains to show that to be able to receive Torah, one has to be humble and not too filled with themselves. because the Torah is about doing for others. The Torah is about how to proliferate kindness in the world and to bring godliness in the world. And the opposite of humility is arrogance and a sense of false inflatedness, and that doesn't leave room to be able to help others. And that's what the Torah is all about, instructing people how to live to make the world better. Number two, as Robin Sue said, is that it's not only that it's a desert, that it's a mountain, but that it was in the middle of the desert. And not only was it in the middle of the desert, but I started this year by talking about greenery, and we're taught that this little mountain in the middle of the desert had a lot of greenery on it, as if to say, look what comes, what grows in the desert, right? Like what happened in the land of Israel, what they've been able to do to grow in the desert. So Torah is, from Har Sinai, shows us not to be distracted if we're like they were in the desert. That's why the word midbar is connected to the word midaber. You could hear somebody speak in the desert because Wi-Fi doesn't work. And also the fact that green, that beauty and growth comes even in the most unlikely places. But the third answer is something new that I saw in the Nesiva Shalom, that says that it's as miraculous for finite man to receive Torah from infinite God as it is to receive Torah from a mountain. It's an absolute miracle that Hashem, who is omniscient, omnipotent, he lives forever, he's all-powerful, and Moshe Rabbeinu can receive whatever level a human being is able to receive from Hashem. A lesson in Moshe Kibel Torah Sinai is it's as unlikely for humans to be able to receive the divine Torah initially, when he did, as if he was talking to the wall, and the wall taught him the Torah. What a beautiful idea. So in the remaining time, but you need to climb and ascend and revere to receive it, and then you will acquire Torah and the eternity therein. So what I did, as we're being Sinai specific this evening, is I chose two passages in the Talmud that teaches us what took place at the moment of. You may be familiar with both of them. The first one quotes a verse in Parshat Yisro, where it states, "Vayisyatzvu betachtis hahar," that the Jewish people situated themselves under the mountain. So the word tachtit is a little bit too elaborate. A better word would have been tachat or eitzel. What does it mean that the Jewish people were situated under the mountain? Amar Rav Avdimi bar Chama bar Chasa Malamed Toras Shekafa Kodesh Baruch Hu Aleim Ehar Kigigis, that Hashem arched the mountain over our heads and said, Va'amal lahem imatem mekabla ma Torah, if you receive the Torah, mutav, good, v'im lav sham tehei kfuraschem, and if not, this will be your end. This would be your burial place. So you ask the question, like, what kind of gift is that? We say the Torah is the gift of the ages. And lo and behold, what kind of gift is this that Hashem says, okay, you receive it or you're finished? So I have two answers to share with you. The first, I heard from a friend many years ago. He said, when a child is very young and a parent knows that the child has to eat a certain food or take a medicine, and the child doesn't want that medicine, the parent goes ahead and, so to speak, lifts a mountain over their head and says, you're going to take this medicine because it's the best thing for you. And if not, I don't know what's going to happen to you. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu knew that the Torah is the greatest thing that ever was. And so we originally chose it. Asher Bachar Banu Mikol. We chose and He chose us. Right? And then Hashem arched the mountain in case that we didn't want. To show us, like a parent tells a child, this is your salvation. But Rav Shimon Schwab says another thing. He said, why does it say Kaf Aleim Har Kegigis? That Hashem arched the mountain over our head like a barrel. Gigis is a barrel, like a barrel of intoxicating beer. Rav Shimon Schwab said, it's not that Hashem, so to speak, made it so dangerous and fearful and frightful. It's that it was so intoxicating that the great God of the world was willing to unite in marriage, so to speak, with the Jewish people with the ring of the Torah. It was as intoxicating as what's inside a barrel, that we understood that would we not accept it with alacrity, we'd never have that opportunity again. Right? They say about Rav David Leibovich, Zichrono Livracha, the first Rosh Yeshiva of Chavetz Chaim in the early 1900s. Right? He said that one time the Alter of Slobodka went to him and said to him, I'd like you to be my shamus, I'd like you to be my gabbai. And he didn't feel like he deserved it, if I remember the story correctly. And so the Alter never asked him again. And he never had that opportunity. And he always regretted it. Right? When you get intoxicated by the moment, you need to embrace that moment and feel up to it. And that's what happened here. And therefore, the message here is that the Torah is vital. It's essential. It's what's kept Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai going when he was in quarantine. And it's what keeps Jewish people put together, even at a time when so many of us are not going out very much. What keeps us together? The mitzvahs that we do, the belief that we have, and the Torah that we study. It's what it's all about. I remember many years ago, maybe about 15 years ago, I was at our local JCC, and I was impressed. They were having this big screen siyum. It was at the time where Rabbi Steinsaltz, who I don't know how often he gets quoted on Torah Anytime, where Rabbi Steinsaltz completed his set, his commentary on the Talmud, and they made a worldwide siyum, and it was broadcasted all over the world. And I'll never forget what he said. He said, the Talmud, meaning the expression of the Torah, the Talmud is the book of sanity in an insane world. It doesn't change. It gives us the wisdom. It needs to have transmission. And it invigorates us and gives us the vitamin. It gives us the spiritual nutrition to be able to live life and pass it forward. That's number one. Number two is a good preparation for Shabbos also. This is the last piece, and then we'll just talk a little. Amar Chizkiah. We're all going to say Kiddush Be'ezras Hashem tomorrow night. It's a great schus to be able to say Kiddush. Right? Really, according to the Torah, you only have to say Kiddush with words. The rabbis came and said you make Kiddush on wine or on grape juice. Why do you make Kiddush on wine or grape juice? Because wine gets better with time. And everything else, or most food products, don't get better with time. And therefore, it's to show us that the Torah is eternal. Our Kiddush is eternal. Shabbos is eternal. So Amar Chizkiah taught, my dichsiv, what does it mean when it's written, Mishamayim hashmas din eretz yareya v'shaketa, which means you caused something to be heard from heaven, the earth feared and was silent. Right? Which means that first it was afraid, and then it became silent at Mount Sinai. Why was the earth first afraid and then silent? Im shaketa, im yareya, lama shaketa. Im shakta, lama yareya. Right? Why was it afraid? Why was it silent? Why did it switch? Ela betchila yareya. Originally, the earth was frightened. Levisof shaketa. And at the end, it became silenced and acquiesced. Balama yareya k'reish lakish. Why was the earth frightened at creation? Dama Reish Lakish, because Reish Lakish taught, what does it mean when we say in Kiddush, my dichsiv, vayehi erev, vayehi voker, yom hashishi. And it was evening and it was morning on the sixth day. None of the other days of creation is there that hey hayediyah, is that extra hey. Yom hashishi. It doesn't say Yom hachamishi haravi'i. It says Yom Rishon, Yom Sheni, Yom Shlishi, and you get to the sixth day, and you have that extra hey hayisera. Lamali. What do we need this for? Malamed. It teaches us that not only at Mount Sinai did Hashem say and experience that the world had to accept the Torah, the Jewish people. Shehisna Kadosh Baruch Hu im Ma'aseh Bereishis, that God said and built into creation a condition. V'amar lahem, and He said to the world, if 2448, if almost 2,500 years later, im Yisrael mekablim haTorah, atem mekayimim, if the Jewish people accept and embrace and study the Torah, atem miskaimim, then the world remains. V'im lav, and if not, ani machsir eschem l'tov avohu. I'm going to turn you back to emptiness and nothingness, astonishing emptiness, which goes to show that already from creation, 2,500 years early, the world was created on condition that the Torah would one day be received and embraced. Which goes to show that not only is the Torah the book of sanity, but the Torah is also essential. Here in this country and around the world, all the governments have been trying to figure out what's allowed to be open and what's not allowed to be open. Who's essential workers, what's not essential. What's more essential, what's less essential. From this Gemara, we see what's most essential for the survival of the world is what we're doing this evening. And so therefore, in summary, we learned tonight about the 4 places. I'm going to put you off of my screen so we can see each other. We learned tonight the 4 different places in the book of Vayikra, where it states Sinai. Why specifically these 4 places does it mention? And we answered, because I might have thought it's not necessary, because we only needed to learn about Shemitah later, we only needed the Mishkan, we only needed punishments if we did something wrong. No, everything was at Har Sinai. We said, what does Shemitah have to do with Har Sinai? Because it's not mentioned later in Dvarim. I might think that only the things that are in Dvarim that were also mentioned at Har Sinai. And then we spent time understanding Moshe Kibel Torah mi Sinai. What does it mean to receive the Torah from Sinai? For that we said that it teaches us you have to be humble, that you don't want distraction and blessings come even in a place that's desolate, and getting the gift of the Torah is as unbelievably miraculous as receiving prophecy from your front door, right? From a tree. And then finally we saw the two Gemaras in Shabbos that talk to us about Har Sinai. The first one tells us that the experience was so grand that it was it was so beautiful you couldn't refuse, either because, like we say, like a parent putting it over a child's head and saying you better take this medicine, or because, like Rav Schwab said, it was an elixir. It was so intoxicating, like a beer, a barrel of beer on tap. It's so intoxicating, how could we not accept it? And the last piece taught us that not only is Torah sanity, but Torah is essential. Because tomorrow night, when each of us have the privilege of hearing or making Kiddush, we're going to remember that Gemara that says, Vayerev vayivoker yom hashishi, the sixth day. Which sixth day? The sixth day of Sivan, which we're going to enjoy in just 2 weeks from today, Be'ezras Hashem, as we'll be able to celebrate our essential holiday no matter where we are, but hopefully we'll be able to do so more together. Okay, I'm going to open it up to questions and to greetings.
Here we go.